This has to do with the war, right? This has to do with the fact that Trump has now gave a warning to Russia, and it's serious. I mean, I don't think it's gonna, anything is gonna come out of it, but but it's a little worrisome that Trump is getting caught in these type of situations. So basically, what happened yesterday, U.S. President criticized Dmitry Medvedev, saying words can often lead to unintended consequences. What does that really mean? Well, you need to understand, who is this guy, Dmitry Medvedev? Why should you care about what he has to say? Well, frankly, he's Russian, and the reason it's important, he's a prominent Russian politician and close ally to Vladimir Putin. As of 2025, he serves as the deputy chairman of Russia's Security Council, a powerful advisory body on national defense and strategic issues. He's a quick rundown of his background. Essentially he was president of Russia. He's a mouthpiece of Russia. He's a mouthpiece of Russia. That's what he is, right? He basically talks about the things that Putin shouldn't be talking about. And, in July 2025, he mocked Trump's shortened peace deadline for Ukraine and referenced the dead end, a Cold War era deterrent system designed to retaliate even if top commander is wiped out. He compared Trump to Biden, saying their foreign policy were equally hostile to Russia. Trump responded by moving U.S. nuclear submarine into forward position. Now, of course, you're going to say, well, Trump is kind of exaggerating. This is not serious. We're not going to go to war with Russia. We're not, obviously. We're not. It's just that this exemplifies two issues that I'm seeing right now that are going on with Russia, with Trump, really. So basically what's happening is Medvedev, who is kind of the mouthpiece, it's not Putin. He's the guy that says that the evil twin of Putin. Well, he's basically saying what Putin doesn't want to say, but wants to insinuate, and then couldn't pull him back. But basically he mocked Trump, right? Saying, oh, look, you have a dead end. You gave us 100 days to do the thing. And what I mean by 100 days, 50 days. He gave 50 days for Russia to stop fighting and come back to Ukraine. And obviously, Russia is winning. And I'll tell you something about Russia. It's important. A little bit scary. It's important, but you need to know that. And basically, he pulled back and he told this guy, "Listen, you got 50 days to stop whatever you're doing with with Ukraine." And then he realized, you know what? 50 days? That's not going to work. I'll give you 12 days. So then he mocked him, saying, your shortened peace deadline for Ukraine in reference the dead hand, a Cold War era. Hey, Elena, how are you? Saying their foreign policy were equally hostile to Russia. Trump responded by moving U.S. nuclear submarines into forward position, accusing Medvedev of trying to provoke nuclear escalation. Well, I mean, the guy wasn't, he was just making fun of you. He was just, and Medvedev then, you know what? He dismissed Trump's threats and doubled down on criticism, saying Western ultimatum pulled the world closer to conflict. Now, was this the first time that this happened? I believe so, right? This is the first time where, a U.S. president basically just react. And, Medvedev have done many provocative action before, right? In March, and he's been warning, he's been doing a lot of things. But the issue with what's going on right now is Trump is reacting to it. In fact, over this weekend alone, I will tell you that Trump has done 3 to 4 things that, frankly, are a bit concerning. Okay, so let me tell you what he did. Well, first of all, he basically yesterday he basically fired that woman that works for the he fired the Erica McEnfer. She basically the one that said that we only had 78,000 employees employment. So it was like very disappointing. Okay, and he said, "You're lying. You're fired." Well, I mean, well, I don't know. I mean, basically, where we showed only 73,000 jobs were added in the previous month, and they were revised downward from 258. So basically, in July, she says only 73,000 jobs, which is very low. You need 220. And then on top of that, Trump doesn't do anything. He hasn't been forced to. Exactly. Basically, he 70,000 jobs, and then in May and June they revised the May and June numbers downward by 258,000. And then last year he had done. She had mentioned she had claimed revision, including an 818,000 job overcount in March. And so basically, they keep overcounting. But it's not that they're lying. I mean, well, I don't know if they're lying or not, but the point is that these are just surveys. But the point is, he fired her. You're gone. Then he also basically, threatening Russia by moving nuclear submarine. That's you gotta be careful, because accidents could happen, and he knows that the guy is not really serious. He's not Putin. Why? Anyway, he's firing us, so it's a very strong statement. Okay. Then what he's doing as well is that he's basically being overly strong with India, for example. Basically saying, who wants these countries? These are poor countries. I don't have anything to do with it. Now, the reason why he went after India is because of the fact that basically India is buying oil from Russia. So basically, he's saying who needs. Everyone is making fun of the warm embrace of India is turning cold, right? In a matter of a month, President Trump has gone from praising India as a major strategic partner. Don't forget, these are serious people, right? Saying he wouldn't care. And now he's saying, I wouldn't even care if your economy implodes. He actually said that, the words. Well, we still value the relationship, but because of what's going on with Russia, nobody is listening, and you're not going along with what I want to do, which means I want you to stop fighting with Ukraine. Keep whatever you have, but that's enough. Who knows what's in Putin's mind? But the problem is that India is still buying oil, so that from Russia, because that's the only thing they have to sell. So it keeps on going. So it was a bit tough. The standoff is fueled by the present public broadside against India, threatened to sink a key but complex geopolitical relationship and break the bonds Trump has forged with India Prime Minister Modi. Now, you have to understand that strategically speaking, and this is what this channel is about, and I would like you to subscribe, because this channel, you see the black swan right next to me? Basically, we're looking for black swans. We're not here to report the news. I mean, the news is going to come out regardless of what we do or we don't do. The point is we need to understand what's happening. We need to realize what's going on exactly and why. What's happening is essentially he's threatening Russia. He insulted India. Now, not saying that he shouldn't be doing anything, and that's a bad thing, right? Because what India is doing, they're giving money to Russia, and Russia is using that money so it could fuel the war with Ukraine, and it's an endless loop. Now, maybe there's another way of doing it, but we're not here to judge or anything. All we're here to say is, how is that going to impact us? Now, the reason this is important, very crucial, the reason is because the concern that Trump has, and frankly everyone should have, is that India and Russia and China and to a certain extent Brazil, but really these three countries are getting together and they are trading with each other. And of course, with Trump, you have to realize you need to look at this like a three-card Monty. You need to look at what's going on, and you need to release Epstein first. Yes, we'll talk about that. You need to you need to look at the two levels. Trump is basically saying, get away from Russia, but the second level is, what does he really want? What does he want? What does he want to stop the war in Ukraine? What I've learned with Trump, it's not what's happening in the right hand, it's what's happening in the left hand. And what's happening there, he wants to prevent the US to become irrelevant, because the US is quickly on its way to become irrelevant. Irrelevant meaning that the US doesn't make anything anymore, which is true. But China really doesn't need the US. I mean, they need the US to buy, but they don't need the technology because they have acquired all the technology. And now there's the BRICS where they could trade with each other. And if they start doing that, then you're off to the races. Meaning they don't need the US anymore. The US is going to be their thing. We're going to do our thing. And so yes, he's using the Ukraine situation to say, stop whatever you're doing, don't, because you're feeding the war. And the reason he's saying that, because people, they could relate to that. They could relate to, yeah, that's right, stop killing the Ukrainian. That is so unfair to kill the Ukrainian. But what's really going on is not that. What's going on is more of a geopolitical aspects. And people are telling him, he says, sir, we are becoming irrelevant. What do you think is behind this thing of make America great again? It's not so much let's make America great again. It's let's prevent from America to become irrelevant. But you wouldn't, that, I mean, the irrelevancy is not such a nice word to hear, right? Let's not make sure we're not irrelevant. So we're just fighting to stay alive? Hey, I mean, it's not me saying, right? In terms of the relevancy of the U.S., take a look at very carefully. But the U.S. doesn't make its medicine. The U.S. is the last. We only 12% of the what's going on with the chips, the microchips, right? The semiconductors. We don't make any of this. We don't make any of the pharmaceutical items. Nothing is being made in the U.S. anymore. Well, I exaggerate, but the point is less and less and less. I mean, let's just give you a simple example. Let's talk, for example, about semiconductors, right? The U.S. holds just 12% of global semiconductors capacity in the world, a drop of 37% since 1990. And it goes on through the healthcare, and he's right. So what he's doing with this thing with the submarine and Russia, he's basically saying that you've got to stop what you're doing. This is serious. Now, of course, he might be overdoing it, a bit overplaying his hand with Medvedev, but he knows that Medvedev is not a serious guy, right? So he's not talking to me. He's talking to his boss, Putin, right? They're not going to fight. It's just that we have to be careful, because sometimes you go out and then you start saying things and it becomes a problem. Now, the reason Trump is also sending the submarine, because that's a power that the U.S. has. The power is submarine and air. Missiles, only 1 week worth of fighting. The question and the trick that you have to be extremely careful is that the U.S., unfortunately, I hate to say it, but the U.S., unfortunately, has less tank than Russia, for example. You have to understand that Russia, never mind doing some testing, they're doing some massive new building and launch pad, potentially including nuclear-powered cruise missile testing. They haven't done it, but they're saying that they want to do it. Please speak up for the people who are dying of hunger. Plants have recently been built and in process of being built, so this number would change. Yes. In fact, I should mention that as well before I go back to the topic of the fact that what he's doing is that with Taiwan, the U.S. actually went out there and told Taiwan, "Listen, what are you doing? Start building stuff in the U.S. We need the stuff in the U.S." And Taiwan said, "Well, I don't know. I gave you $4 billion. I give you 100. You got to give me more than that. You got to give me more than 100 billion." And essentially, what they're doing now, and they say, if you don't give me 100, you know what? Forget. In fact, don't come and visit me. By the way, at the White House right now. This is a bit ridiculous. Go over there and basically, what we're going to do is we're going to let you with the Chinese. Literally, the U.S. did not want to see the president of Taiwan, because Taiwan is 60% semiconductors. So that's a lot. Okay. So why should you be concerned about Russia? You should be concerned about Russia because, and this is actually coming from the NATO Secretary General, Mark Rutte, repeated a warning, and he has made in public at least 3 times this year. The Western alliance is severely lagging behind Moscow on ammunition production. Now, you may see the U.S. with the B-52 bombers and the submarine. That's true. That's strong, but you don't win a war with that. You threaten, you do big action, but you don't scare anyone. What's going to happen is right now, Russia has a tremendous amount of weaponry. Do you realize that the U.S. makes 40,000 155 millimeter artillery shells, right? That's not bad. But you know what? The Supreme NATO Commander in Europe told the Senate Armed Service Committee that from Washington that they expect Russia to produce 250,000 shells monthly. 250,000 versus 40,000 for the U.S. What's going on? What is going on? The NATO Mark repeated warning. He's saying Russia produces in 3 months what the whole of NATO produces in a year. NATO, including the U.S. So what are they doing? Do you really think that Russia now is going to suddenly decide that, you know what, I think what I want to do is I want to, I think I'm gonna stop. I'm probably want to stop the fighting, and I'm not gonna go over it, and we should be okay. No, Russia right now, with the weaponry that it has, which is a lot, it's very unlikely that they're going to do that. It's very unlikely that they're going to want to stop anything at all. In fact, they may keep going and going and going until whatever happens. And right now, Russia, I hate to say it, but Russia has more weapons than the U.S. in terms of artillery. I'm not saying that Russia has more nuclear weapon, because at the end of the day, nobody's going to use a nuclear weapon. So what's really going on here? What is Trump doing? Well, like I said before, he's acting at 2 levels. First, he's saying, I want to stop, I want to help Ukraine. But what he's really doing is he's saying the U.S. is becoming irrelevant, so we're going to have to stop that right now. Now, of course, he's got to be very careful, right? Because he's dealing with Putin. And Putin wants to make Russia great again. And I'm not going to give you the history of Putin, but that's his thing. He wants to make Russia great again. Artillery statistics are not significant. Well, I hate to say it, Western analysts has been highlighting that the U.S. and NATO must pivot towards cost-effective, high-volume, small and unnamed system to match Russia's volume-driven strategy. What are you going to do? You're going to send soldiers in Russia? It's never going to happen. Have you seen what happened have you seen what happened with Israel? Did you see how that war was fought? Right? You didn't see one soldier. You didn't see what you saw: the plane and the missile, the plane and the missile, the plane and the missile. That's all. That's how this war is going to be fought in the future. And unfortunately, the U.S. is structured for an old war. Well, an old war, but a war that is really, in terms of the submarine but the Russia's strength production is up 7 times. I mean, and what they're doing, armored vehicle, 4 to 10 times. The tanks. What's the number I'm looking for in terms of tanks? The Russia has more tanks than in the U.S. So what is Trump doing? Yeah, I know we know that he's trying to scare up the guy and basically say, listen, uh, uh, I know and you know we're not going to fight, but I'm just telling you that I'm serious about it. And of course, it highlights the fact that I'm saying that Trump might be a little bit off his hinges, a little bit. He may fight that woman, and it's kind of weird. And you got the Epstein story going on in the background, and he insulted India, and he's threatened Taiwan, the presidents. It's a little bit unhinged. I mean, maybe he needs to do that because, after all, he's got a lot of things on his plate. But he's thinking in the back of his mind that, listen, what we're doing here, the concern that I'm having is that we're becoming irrelevant. Therefore, we need to do something right now. So what needs to happen? What needs to happen? Well, what needs to happen is basically Russia needs to stop with what they're doing with Ukraine, or India needs to stop buying oil from Russia. Do you really think that's going to happen? Do you really think that Russia is going to say, okay, well, I'm stopping? And then Trump knows that, so he's playing hardball. And so far, Russia needs tanks and it's landlocked, but they have lost over half of its tank. They can project power at 100 miles to Ukraine. Russia is in World War II age weapon. Be careful. Be careful of where you get your information and make sure it is accurate. Because when the NATO Secretary General, without being into details, what they have, what they don't have, repeating a warning he has made in public at least 3 times this year, the Western is severely lying behind ammunition production. Why is that? Why is this happening? Well, this is happening for a very simple reason, is because Russia is a war machine. You're spending 5% of your GDP or maybe on weaponry. Russia is spending a lot more. Okay? The U.S. is spending a lot, right? The U.S. dominate global arm exports, accounting for 43% of all major arms sales. Russia ranks third with 7.8. But the Russia export slump impact the international section. A keynote, but still it is a lot. Russia produces in 3 months what NATO produces in a year. Let me repeat, he says, NATO economy is 25 times bigger than Russia, and it's 25 times bigger than Russia, and yet it's producing 4 times as much ammunition as the ammunition as a whole of NATO produce at the moment. So we need to do something, and they're doing something. Europe is going to spend money to bring up. And the U.S., remember, as part of the big beautiful bill, we're going to spend $150 billion in weaponry. So all these people have guns and weapons and missiles, but what are they going to do with it? Going to stop? Discipline capable of inheriting Ukraine in 5 years. If Russia had superior power, Ukraine would be in Russia. Oh, well, the thing is, no one is going to be invading anyone else, right? The U.S. is not going to invade Russia. Russia is not going to invade Ukraine. You have to understand, and I know and this is something that I need to talk about as well, is that the news that we're getting, right, and the info is partial. And by that I mean, well, they're telling you, well, they can't be that great. You've been fighting for 5 years. They're not doing anything. But Russia may not want to, because they're saying maybe Russia wants to go to Europe. No, they want to keep busy. It's the same thing that they tell you, for example, that Iran has a nuclear bomb to destroy Israel. That's a bad thing, right? It's a bad thing to have a nuclear bomb and destroy Israel. But Iran knows very well that they'll never be able to destroy Israel with this missile because they'll never have time to use it. But what they're doing, again, this is a level, second level of information that we need to know, is the fact that they're doing it because they are making $2 trillion. Not they, not Iran, but the people in charge of Iran are making $2 trillion. It cost $2 trillion to build that bomb. So therefore, they took the 2 trillion and they enriched themselves. The same way the Hamas people, right? They're not in Gaza right now. They're hiding all over the place. Before they were in Qatar, living in the life of luxury, they were basically saying, "Listen, no, we need to free the Gazian people, but why don't you go fight with the people instead? You're over there, so you're in it for the money. All these people are in it for the money, and the news that you're getting, unfortunately, tells you what is easy for you to understand. For example, they're saying that Ukraine is, he's never going to invade Ukraine. I don't think he wants to invade Ukraine. I think he just wants to keep these people busy. He wants to keep them away from where he is, which is basically where he's keeping it, right? And meanwhile, what they're doing is reinforcing his control with China and North Korea. These people are getting together slowly and surely. And you're not going to stop that, and that's not what they want. They don't want to invade the whole world. And ultimately, what's happening is, unfortunately, and that's the main thing, is the fact that the U.S. is becoming irrelevant, isn't it? Well, we'll find out soon enough, because Trump is saying, okay, stop fighting now. Netanyahu, stop fighting with Iran. Okay, that worked. You're fired. India, what are you doing? Well, I didn't do anything with India, just insulted them, and Taiwan. But basically, he's done a lot of action and fired the people and gone after the Fed, right? Done all these things. The only thing that he hasn't been to be very successful is with that group around China. China, Russia. Now he's trying to get at India to separate India from the two of them. But these people are not moving anywhere. For example, China, and I'll do a video on China because it's a very complex issue. Right now with China, what's happening is Trump is trying to basically coerce China into basically giving him the rare minerals. So, and that's a major topic, this Chinese situation, because you got China and then you've got Russia, and you're not able to do anything with them. You could let go of that poor woman over, and I'm not so much denigrating Trump. I mean, I understand what he's trying to do, right? And we're just analyzing the situation here, right? He's trying to make sure that the U.S. is not relevant, right? He's trying to make, then he's saying that we should stop the Ukraine war. That's for the public consumption. But really what he wants to do is he wants to make sure the U.S. is relevant. And more important, the way you do it is you got to split Russia and China. And basically, if you could split India as well. But he realizes that maybe these people are already done. Maybe these people are together already. In fact, all three of them are part of BRICS. You have to understand that the way these people make decisions, they make decisions on a grain scale. They're not thinking one step at a time. They're thinking, what's really happening, right? They sat down at a big table and they say, what's going on in the world right now? Well, what's going on in the world is us becoming irrelevant. Capable American air power and fighter. Yes, of course. I'm not saying the U.S. is weak, but I'm saying Russia is pretty strong. And frankly, the last time the U.S. won any kind of war was a long time ago. And the last thing you want happening right now is a war, right? And nobody wants that. And you're not going to have a war just because he said that and he sent a... No, the reason you're going to have a war, I'll tell you how a war is going to stop. It's very simple. It escalates. And the way it escalates is very simple. Well, it's not simple, but it's simple in principle. It's basically right now, you see that China, you can't move them. You can't move China and you can't move Russia, right? So what China is doing right now, there's a whole discussion right now with them with AI. They want to get China because China wants to expand the AI tremendously, right? The only thing is China has a huge amount of deflation, meaning that for the past 33 months, deflation. The prices are going down. Why the prices are going down? Because they have so many items that they're creating. I mean, after all, they make everything in the world. Who cares about the war? Well, you will care. because I will tell you that these people, if you can't agree on anything and you need something needs to happen, because obviously Trump needs China and needs, for example, the rare mineral, right, rare earth mineral from China, which you need to make missiles, because the war is going with the missiles, people, not with the tanks, and not with submarines, none of that. It's going to be with the missiles, and you need to produce a lot of quantity, tremendous. So you stay in your house and you keep bombing the people from a distance. So what's happening with China right now? The issue is that they need to sell those items. They need to, but nobody want. And the largest trading partners that China has, I hate to tell you, it's the U.S. So they need to sell to the U.S. But the U.S. says stop. I know. You're suffocating. But I don't want it. Or 50% tariffs, basically, unless you give me the rare earth mineral. Yeah, but if I give you the rare earth mineral, I know what you're going to use it for, because you need it for weaponry. And since I control 90% of rare earth mineral on Earth, I mean, in terms of the production, because you guys forgot how to do it, like a lot of things that you forgot to do, right? Because you let us do everything, and now we know how to do it, and you don't know how to do it. So now you need to, right? But I'm not going to give it to you. Well, then if I'm not giving it, I'm not, you know what I mean? So there is this thing, and that's why they all went to Sweden a couple of days ago. Now they're coming back. They're trying to find a way to communicate, because, frankly, Trump could make China's life very difficult by not buying anything. China supplies the third world countries with very inexpensive product. Well, yes, that's what they did. That was a strategy. And even to us, you know, give the shoes to the US, give everything cheap. I could make everything. By the way, I like to make semiconductors. By the way, I like to make weapons. By the way, I like to make other more complicated things. And now that I know how to make everything, frankly, maybe, yeah, NVIDIA, I need NVIDIA still to learn a few things from them, but after a while, I won't need anything anymore. And I could just, maybe I could sell it to India more and to Russia, which I've started doing, right? So Trump needs to get in the middle of that, because otherwise what's going to happen if the Chinese cannot sell everything that they have, because the population is getting older, right? And they also have a lot of production, huge amount of deflation. What is people going to do, right? What do you do when you have huge factories that are empty and nobody to sell it to? Then you turn around and you say, you know what? The reason you're unhappy is because America has decided not to buy your products for whatever reason. Therefore, and by the way, I think Taiwan belongs to us now. We're going to go in, and obviously the U.S. has to do something, and then this whole situation gets unlocked by a war. Why is Russia still fighting? They're fighting because they have learned to become a war economy, and they're building the weapons. So they're going to go home, take it all back? No, that's never going to happen. No, they're going to stay there until such point where they are given what they want, which is fixedly more and more, or there's some kind of a conflict. But the issue is Trump cannot unlock China or Russia, which happens to be in an area of the world which is frankly quite populated, right, at the lower part, the circumvallatory Paris in that area, and Russia will be very happy to be the master of that area, and we don't need the U.S. And by the way, the U.S. is doing a great job, because U.S. is pissing off everyone because they're desperate. They have to move quickly. Maybe they're moving too quickly. And this is kind of the theme, right? Yes, million civilians are in war. Yeah, I mean, Trump is too busy doing stupid, sad spending and his legacy of stupid, evil greed. Raf, I don't think you like Trump too much. China has also made extremely sophisticated infrastructure. Crystal is correct. China is very sophisticated. Do they really need the U.S. on anything? I'm not so sure anymore. The past 20 years, they've been building and building and building and building. And what has the U.S. done? Well, basically printing money and sending the money overseas. And that is probably not the best thing to do. So at some point, what needs to happen is that the U.S. needs to make sure that that doesn't happen anymore. But what do you do? I mean, I know Trump, people don't like Trump, and frankly, his technique is maybe obtuse, but the US is losing some sort of a race here, right? The race of becoming relevant. You need to stay relevant. And the way you stay relevant, how was the US relevant in the past? Well, because you needed the US. Why did you need the US? You needed the US because the US was had the central currency, and they were able to sell, and you needed the dollar. You still need the dollar. I mean, don't get me wrong, but you need less of it. Why do you think everyone is concerned with Bitcoin? Why do you think gold is going so much? Why do you think Bitcoin? All of these, because they're finite amount. I mean, think of the power of the US has right now with its dollar. Basically, I mean, it would be great if you had that power. You go buy a car, and then you go buy a house, and you charge a bunch on your credit cards. And when your credit card is maxed, you say, I'm going to get another credit card. What are you going to do? But I'm going to pay that credit card with a new credit card. But how are you going to pay that? Well, let me print some money in my basement and give it to you, and that's it. I'm allowed to do that. And that's what the US has been doing. And people are taking the dollar for its face value. This is what's happening. And in fact, with $37 trillion owned, what's going to happen is the US needs to do and print more money in order to pay what it owes. That will debase the currency. And that has been happening very slowly, quite frankly, because the US had to do that because they owe a lot of money. And what Biden did with the dollar, because it's a weapon, doesn't have any positive thing to say instead of criticism. Sounds like, why doesn't he give positive advice and what should be done? That's a good question. What advice to do? What should be happening? Well, that's when strategy comes in, right? The fact is, because you owe so much money and you need to debase the currency, and what has happened is because at the end of the day, what this currency, what this channel is about avoiding black swan, right? We're trying to figure out where the risk is going to come from, and we have to be concerned about, because I mean, advice. What advice can I possibly give everyone? Nobody's going to listen to anything. What I want to know is I want to protect myself. I want to make sure that I want to travel in a country where there's going to be war. I want to make sure I get my money out of the portfolio in case something bad happens. I want to make sure maybe I should be holding gold or Bitcoin, right? Because what's happening right now, and this is what I want my subscriber to do, I want to provide you with advice. I don't want to feel I'm always criticizing or anything like that. That's not what I'm doing. I'm just analyzing the situation so you could understand what is happening, because it will. These people, I mean, don't forget about Putin and Trump. They have jobs. They're going to be fine. Their children are going to be fine. It's you that I'm concerned about, because how is what they're doing is actually impacting you. So what's going to happen with Trump, with the currency is going to get weaker and weaker. And what Biden did, that's what I wanted to say, what Biden did, he weaponized the currency. How did he weaponize? When basically when Putin invaded Ukraine, he said, okay, you're out of the dollar business. You will not, and that was a mistake. Everyone recognized that, because now you're forcing them to do without the dollar. You will never survive. And guess what? He's still around, and not only that, he has more tanks than the U.S., and he has more missiles than the U.S. He's got other things that he's less than the U.S., but he's doing quite well. Thank you very much. So what does this mean? It means, oh, damn, those people are able to survive without the dollar. That's right, because you push them into that situation. So what Trump is doing, he's trying to circumvent, and he knows that he can't. And that's, what do you think he's going to India? He realized that he can't do anything with Russia. It's impossible. You cannot do anything with Russia because they're already dealing with each other. Who knows what type of deal they made with each other? So he needs to separate, because the last thing he needs is India plus Russia plus China. Try to get in the middle of that. And of course, unfortunately, because the way it's being done right now, you're upsetting a lot of people. Never mind India, but you upset Canada and Taiwan. You see what you did with Taiwan? I mean, you basically told the guy, listen, you got to help me out. You got to bring your factory here in the U.S., or you got to give me $200 billion. And you went to Europe. You did all these things in a way. Yeah, I mean, it's working. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying that in the process, you're upsetting a lot of people. And the more you do of that, the more maybe at some point they could do without you. Now, Trump knows that, we're not there yet, right? The US is still 25% GDP. But you better throw your weight around now what you can, because if the US becomes 10% of GDP, then nobody's going to care. Well, that's never going to happen. Well, right now, most of what the US does very well, which is 80% of the GDP, is basically services. And 20% is the stuff that we're talking about. We're talking about semiconductors, rare earth mineral, pharmaceutical items, all these things that we build. It's only 20% of GDP. So that's great. So still making money with having banks and things like that, right? So financial services, that's fantastic. Yeah, but you don't eat. You don't get protected with your banks, right? If you don't make weapons, if you don't make pharmaceutical item, and you have no semiconductors or rare earth mineral, then what's happening? You're not relevant because you can't defend yourself. Well, nobody's going to come. We have the nuclear war, right? So nobody's going to. No, I'm not talking about a nuclear war. I'm really talking about the fact that you're becoming irrelevant and they don't trade with you. They're just going to ignore you. They're not going to fight you. They're just going to ignore you. And why do you think this idea of the making America great again? Because he's concerned that America is not great again and is shrinking. And it is a fact, and you could check it. Global factors are very delicate in many manners, says Carmine. Yes, yes. And unfortunately, it will impact you. You may want it, you may like it, you may not like it. It will impact you. The US today, unfortunately, just give you a quick example that in terms of, let's talk about, because even Switzerland, Trump went after Switzerland in a way that Swiss government has denounced Donald Trump's decision to impose a 39% tariff on the country. I mean, it's not a tariff discussion. It's supposed to be about the submarine, but a steep rate that sent the Swiss franc sliding. Why? Why? Because Switzerland exported 60 billions of goods in the US last year. So what? Which are largely pharmaceuticals. The pharmaceutical industry is not dying in the US, but it's got a little bit of problem. Why? 90% of all prescription dispensed in the US are generic drugs, and most are not produced domestically. So Trump is fighting all of these on different fronts. The only difference with Russia is that he cannot fight Russia directly. Not fight in that word. He's not able to get them to do what he wants to do because he doesn't care and he doesn't need the US anymore. He needs India. So he's going to go after India. Now be careful what you're doing here. Right? Because Putin wants to make Russia great again. Wants to make Russia great again. So perhaps if Trump actually listened or cared about his intelligence briefing, Christelle has a point, actually, because Trump is doing everything. Now, I mean literally he's doing everything. And you're going to say, well, that's a mistake. Well, I beg to differ. The market is up, right? The stock market is up. What else is doing great? NATO is going to spend 5% like he wanted to. He stopped the Israel war with Iran, okay? What else? The Doge thing seemed to have saved some money. He got the big, beautiful bill done, right? It's working. The thing is, because he decides everything, for example, with the Japanese situation, when he went in there, it was done in like 70 minutes. He literally negotiated himself the fact that Japan is going to pay 15% tariffs, which is okay, but they were also going to invest $600 billion in the US. But that's even better. Well, the only thing is the way the negotiation was done, it was done in a way that is not very clear. It's not like Japan is giving you $600 billion in cash. They're giving you what they're giving you basically is loans, and it's 5% loans. Japan has already said he's lying. Yeah, who said that? Right. Rose said that. He's lying. It's a big fat lie. I like it. Well, we don't know what happened because he was the one negotiating, right? He was the one negotiating this thing back and forth, or who the heck knows what he was doing. But the point is that he got 600 billion. And the beauty of what he's doing, it is a beauty because he's telling everyone, look, they're going to invest 600 billion, but they realize, but it's not 600 billion. Basically what this is, the cash is maybe 5 million of equity. It's not 600 billion of equity. They're basically saying, yeah, I'm going to lend you money, but let's talk about it. And the same thing happened with Europe, where the Europe said they're going to invest 750 billion. They're going to buy 750 billion of item from the U.S. energy, but they're not actually buying anything because they never bought 750 over 3 years, which is 250, but they never spent that much on energy to begin with, maybe 100 billion, 120, and you want them to spend 250. So that also is a problem. That's a problem. So all of that, meaning that Trump is spinning as fast as he can because he's running out of time and he's not able to push Putin to do anything. So now is Trump desperate? You know, he wants you to send a submarine around, submarine knocks somebody over, something happens. I mean, who knows what could happen in this situation, right? Accidents have happened in very, very similar way. I mean, the U.S. has nuclear-powered submarines that carry non-nuclear cruise missiles that can be used to strike target on land. You know, that's what they did with Iran, for example. No, they're not going to attack Russia, right? And you have to be careful because Russia could respond in kind. People have said it was striking that the U.S. president appeared to be engaged in some sort of nuclear signaling that American officials have long criticized Russian Vladimir for doing. What are you doing? You're waving around this thing. You shouldn't be doing that. And Medvedev has long engaged in provocative statement on social media. So you should know that. Or you knew, either you knew and you don't care because you fell for it, or you knew and you are serious. Because don't forget, each time you advance your word, you say you're going to do something. If you don't do that thing that you said you were going to do, then you lose relevance. Taxes are up, Social Security is down. Well, Jason, don't bring up Social Security, okay? Because now you have to realize, and this is also something that's of concern, is, you know, there's only enough Social Security until 9 years from now. After that, either you're getting paid less or you need to find another way of financing it. The point, you could see that, you know, and this is what Trump is trying to do. We're going to make America great again. We're going to make America more relevant again because we're becoming irrelevant. The problem is back to this nuclear business. He's not able to manage Russia, and that's the frustrating part. And you're not going to be able to budge Putin. No way. Because if you think your people are close to you, the people near Putin are even closer because otherwise they die, right? So Secretary of State Marco Rubio played down Medvedev's warning. He basically is not a relevant player in Russian politics, said on Fox. He's certainly someone in official position. I don't think he's going to be a factor one way or the other. And Rubio is saying to Trump, oh, come on. Please. And you have to be careful how you handle Trump. You have to be very careful. Because have you seen J.D. Vance recently? Right? Since the Iran situation, you haven't seen him at all. And of course, I don't think he wants to come out either because even though he wants to make America great again and you know what's going on, he has to be careful the way he handles himself. Otherwise, he's going to be in a difficult situation. So what does it mean for you, my subscribers? And don't forget to subscribe to this channel because I come to you every day with a new topic and trying to explain is more importantly analyze. I'm not here to criticize Trump, really. I'm not here to, to say you should do this, you should have done that. I'm just saying what's really going on, right? For example, what's really going on with Ukraine is that Trump, I'm not so sure Trump is really concerned about the war in Ukraine as much as he's concerned that he's not able to get Russia to budge or China to budge, and maybe the cement has already cemented, if you know what I mean. And these people are now together in a strong kind of way, and you're not able to get in the middle of them, and they're becoming more powerful. And since we're making less and less in the U.S., the U.S. is becoming more irrelevant and losing ground, right? So he's trying to, and that's the idea. Although people thought it was funny, but when he said, "Well, let's make Canada the 51st state, let's make Greenland." Right? Let's make our own block, because people, they are making their own block. Let's see what India does. Right? Because he told them, tariff, I'm going to tariff you unless you stop selling oil to Russia. What do you think they're going to do? Do you think they're going to stop doing business with Russia? What's going to happen? Trump is no diplomat, as was Henry Kissinger. Wow. Carmine, I will say one thing about Kissinger. He was a shrewd and very efficient. Do you know that Kissinger was instrumental in creating, not to start on another topic, but creating chaos in South America in order for the communists not to come over there and be a burden like they are right now in Cuba. Right? Cuba, lots of Russian down there, believe it or not. Okay? And that's what he did. That's what Kissinger did. That's why look at the history. Itchen has a very good book on Kissinger, where basically he shows that what he did was almost immoral, frankly. Disturbing the peace, disturbing the CIA going in South America. Kissinger was very, very shrewd. The way he managed with China. Pay attention why he moved submarines in Russia, period. Well, he's not going to attack Russia. It's just that I think Rubio may be correct that, you're paying attention to a guy that is irrelevant. The thing is, you have to understand, you say, well, take it easy. Well, can you really take it easy? How much time do you have? I'm not talking about Trump. I'm talking about the U.S. Do you know that in 5 to 10 years, the U.S. Let me just check. How many years before the U.S. loses the semiconductor production? I think it's not expected. Yeah, okay, here we go. The U.S. is not expected to lose semiconductor production entirely, but without sustained investment and strategic policy, it risks falling behind the leading edge chip manufacturing over the next 5 to 10 years. Right? The U.S. has less than 12% shares in the semiconductor manufacturing, down from 37%. Listen, if I know, and now you know the numbers, if I know that, you think that people in Washington know that. And they're saying, what can we do? He was caught telling Aussie billionaire sub-placement down. Yes. Who was in Panama while they were being kicked out of the Trump Hotel? I don't know. I didn't know the story. But the point is that semiconductor minus 12%, leading edge node production less than 5%, dominated by Taiwan and South Korea. That's why Trump went to Taiwan and said, listen, you got to get moving and you got to help us here. I know you spent $4 billion last year and the year before. You need to spend $100 billion. Yeah, I'm going to spend it. You got to spend more money, because if you don't spend more money, you know what's going to happen? I'm going to let you to China. I'm losing to China anyway. Chip design. The U.S. has, thanks to NVIDIA, right, that the U.S. still leads strongly with NVIDIA. Why do you think China wanted NVIDIA back in the game in China. Okay, and even that, China is complaining that that NVIDIA is putting. It was a story, and we'll talk about that when I bring the NVIDIA story. But basically, what's happening is China wants NVIDIA on board, and they want to know what's going on, and let's do business. But 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 uh, but then Trump says, well, then give me the rare earth mineral. Well, then buy my stuff. Well, okay, let's. And they're going back and forth like that, but they're not able to agree. It's tough for two people two big giants like that to agree on anything because they don't want to give up on anything because somebody has to lose something. Legacy nodes moderate, so U.S. has more domestic capacity. So the only thing in terms of semiconductor that the U.S. is doing well is most electronic and common are a very limited lifespan and need replacement. Look at cell phones. Yes, but the point is right now the U.S. is losing that war. So what I want my subscribers to understand is that what Trump or the organization is doing is they need to you need your strategy, right? You need a strategy to get these things. We need to stay relevant. I'm not going to say make America great again because it sounds too Trumpist, but you need to, like any country really wants to become relevant. Like Taiwan wants to become relevant. They say, well, I don't want to be invaded by China. The problem with Taiwan is it's so small they can't protect themselves, and they have to do whatever Trump is going to say because Trump is not playing around, and Trump does not have the time. The U.S. doesn't have much time. Hey, 5 to 10 years. We're talking 5 to 10 years before the U.S. loses the leading edge. And then, well, what are you good for? You're a big giant with 5% GDP. Who needs you? We're gonna take over all of your your banks and your investment banks and all that because that's just fluff. I mean, you make a lot of money from that, but 20 years. So so now hopefully you understand what Trump is trying to do here. Why is Trump so concerned and so hyped up? He wants to get it done. He needs to get these things done quickly because he's running out of time and the US is running out of time. Now you got to be careful, obviously. You don't push too fast because if you start moving nuclear submarines all over the place and one bangs into another and before you have that is not what he's looking for, right? The president is showing he won't be cowed by nuclear blackmail. That's a message to Russia. But they all know that this is not what it's about, right? The U.S. submarine force is known as a silent service because the job is to lurk undetected around the world. You know, he's not, okay, fine, they don't know where the submarine is, but he's not going to bomb. The commander-in-chief is responding to Medvedev's mouth online. But even rhetorical exchange of a weapon that could create mass destruction are worth avoiding, right? You cannot throw around the N-word, according to Trump, meaning nuclear. And he was correct, right? You don't want to be doing this. This is too dangerous. This is too much of the question that you have to ask yourself is, why is Trump doing that? And what could be the impact on us? Well, frankly, if you have China is nowhere near the world presence the U.S. has. No, not Trump. It's nuclear, and as in nuclear. I'm not talking about anything else here. Take it easy. It's nuclear, right? And the other guy was mentioning the N word because Medvedev was saying around when he was when it was going on with Ukraine, the nuclear this, nuclear that, and stop saying that word because you're scaring the kids. And now Trump is doing it. Now, I think Trump probably had a long, very tiresome weekend. He had a lot of things on his mind. A lot of things have happened this weekend. First, the housing, the numbers for unemployment came out. Employment came out and only created 78,000 jobs. That is way, way below expectation. And I will tell you, sometimes I feel that Trump is a little bit unhinged because what he ended up doing the same weekend, he has fired the woman that's in charge of the situation with with Erica McIntyre, right? She's in charge of this group, and she basically fired her. Why did he? He directed a dismissal after the July job report showed only 73,000 jobs. It's not her fault. Well, I mean, she's not responsible for the jobs. I guess she probably didn't do a good job looking for it. And previous month revised downward by 258,000. So the months of May and June were actually lower than expected. But technically, I think he's overreacting. Why? Well, because in a way, the fact that you're producing less, it means that you're going to be able to lower, it's going to be almost obvious that you're going to lower the rates in August. So for you, my subscribers, you're going to pay less for borrowing money, right? So that's kind of a good thing in a way. But of course, the way he took it is, no, you're lying. We're doing great. Well, but then if we're doing great and she's lying because obviously you're firing her, so the numbers are probably higher or the number is incorrect, then therefore that means that we should be, there's no reason to lower rates. So which one is it? You want to lower the rates? I don't care. I want to add. And it's difficult for him to manage the situation. It would appear not to be critical, but I mean, he's making a lot of decision back to back. And the thing is, yes, there's no accountability anymore. The Democrats are gone. This last military operation proves that we are 100,000% military superior in any other country. Well, Don is right. I mean, nobody's got the B-52 bombers. But I will tell you that going forward, the wars are not going to be fought like that. They're going to be fought with missiles from planes, but bombers are going to be a tough thing to move around in the dark all the time. They're going to find out where they are, and they're going to be brought down. Exactly, Blue Baron. And I'm thinking the same thing. What country are you? Well, hold on. Okay, I don't want to appear that I am one way or the other here. Okay. And this is a good point that he brings up. Because you say, who's this guy telling us all these things, right? The idea is, and this is the idea for this channel, is that what we want to do is we're trying to have an analysis of what's going on, right? We try to understand what's happening. We're not trying to saying this is good and this is bad, because unfortunately, wherever you're going to get your news from now on, I will tell you, it's becoming very difficult to get news the right way because everything is very biased. Let's talk about this for a second. You go to, I don't know, CNN. You go to CNN if you don't like Trump. Unfortunately, right? They're going to tell you, this is bad. Look what he's doing. He was mean to the Indian prime minister. He was mean to Taiwanese. He's really upsetting the Canadian, right? And you go to Fox and they're saying, this is a good thing. Finally, they're respecting us. So which one is it? Because as you probably know, the world is not either that way or that way. You got to be in the middle. You got to live a little bit in the middle. Otherwise, European being the minority in Western Europe is absolutely disastrous. That's another topic. So what you want to make sure is wherever you get your news, that you understand the story behind the story. For example, Ukraine it's not about Ukraine, it's about protecting the US, because the US is kind of becoming irrelevant. But this is not something that Trump is doing. Frankly, Russia is doing it that way as well, right? And Xi Jinping in China wants to make China great again. They want to make their country great again. The only thing is, whenever you talk like that, it's a bit remembers of someone in the World War II, where they want to make Germany great again, because but you cannot do it. You cannot do it alone, because then it doesn't work. And this is where Trump is doing some interesting work, is that he's going after all of the pillars that have been known to be stable. And they're saying, yeah, I'm sure somebody must have told, yeah, we know, we're losing ground here, we're losing ground there. But let's take our time, let's discuss with our allies. And that's what the European was saying. Let's talk about this thing. Let's discuss. You say, yeah, we're going to discuss. If we're not ready by August 1st, you get 30%. I said, you're kidding me. I mean, 30%, that's too much. Well, then that's it. Can we get 15 and 15% and you give me this, and that? And basically they gave it to him, but what did they really give apart from the 15% is, I don't think has been signed yet, but $750 billion in energy that they probably don't need and they're never going to use, and 600 billion investment, which frankly Van Leyen was not even allowed to offer because she's putting forward investment by private firms. She has no authority to allow that to happen. So I don't think that could possibly happen. So therefore, he's out there pushing and tugging all these people, and some of them don't want to move, but they probably told them, well, maybe you could slow down a little bit. But Trump, being who he is, first of all, he's 79 years old. So keep in mind that it took 3 years to negotiate the North American trade agreement. I mean, do you know how many years it would take to negotiate all these things? And I tell you, it's 5 to 10 years. All of these things that we're thinking about, I mean, I'm not even talking about the healthcare thing. I'm just talking about the semiconductors. We're talking 5 to 10 years, and then you're out. Okay, Gulf of America, exactly, Gary. So you got to be careful. So that's what they're doing. In the background, they agree something needs to get done, but how are you going to get it done? And this is why Trump used the tariffs. What else could he do? Well, he could go to war with everyone and say, okay, from now on, you're making great America great again. Taiwan, you're going to send me $300 billion. And this is kind of what the president in Brazil said. Well, you're acting like an emperor. Well, it's either you wait, but the U.S. hasn't been that successful, or you coerce, which is what Trump is doing, or you go to war. Right? Keep in mind that owing $37 trillion, which can technically never be repaid, and by the way, the Chinese owe less and less and less and less of that money, so they already know that at some point they want to get rid of the dollars and use some other currency. So once, believe it or not, the weapon you don't want to lose is the dollar. Once you lose the dollar, it's over. This man is clueless because North American agreement is a failure. Was on. Well, I mean, the idea with trade and tariffs, frankly, you're not supposed to use them, like that, right? Tariffs and trades are supposed to be among countries that understand each other. I mean, historically, the tariffs and I mean, there was, I think, I talked about that a while back, but there was a story where the tariffs came from a long history, and you're not supposed to use tariffs in that fashion. You're supposed to use a tariff in the way, is to feed your people. It's not to use to feed the people. So that's where we are with this submarine. I'm sorry, I'm getting too excited with the situation because when I talk to you, I realize that what Trump is doing, he might be doing a little bit too fast, but he may not have that much time. And when he makes moves like that, now means you're getting a little bit desperate. And I think he realizes too that he can't move them. It's too fast. Are we going to have a war? There's never going to be a nuclear war. Never. Because nobody wins, so they're not stupid. including the Iranians. And the Iranians are doing it just to make money. The issue, obviously, what's going to happen is when does it stop, right? Maybe, don't forget, and we did a video this morning on that, but there is a bit of a thorn in his side, is the fact that you have the Epstein story, the Maxwell story behind all this. And don't forget, Trump is able to do all these things and be so boisterous. We need solution, not politics. Trump is able to do all this. I'm going to talk slower now because I'm getting a bit too excited. Trump is doing all this because what I mean, he doesn't have time. He knows that he's got this Maxwell situation going in the background. What do you think is going to happen if something comes? And the reason he's able to do all these things is because, frankly, he is able to do this because no one is saying boo to him. Nobody is able to stop him. Why isn't anybody able to stop him? Well, because, frankly, he's got the power. Nobody is there to stop him. I mean, they're trying to review the agreement, the tariff. Is that even legal? What he's doing? He says it's emergency. Emergencies have the right to do it. Well, what kind of emergency are we talking about? When you say that the Brazilian president, we're going to give 50% to Brazil because you're trying to imprison my friend, what does that have to do with the U.S. security agreement? Oh, no, I didn't mean it that way. That's not what I meant. Somebody must have told him, don't say that because that doesn't hold water. You can't do it. So what do you think happens? So since he can be stopped, he could do anything he wants. They plan on the ground till the smoke clears. That's possible. Due to the weather altering technology. Anyway, so what do you think is happening? They're trying, they can't stop him. There's no way they could stop him, including the Democrats, forget it. I hate to say it, but they have no standing right now. And as far as the Republicans are concerned, they're just staying away from him because, he's got the MAGA behind him. But be careful. Because MAGA did not like what happened with the Maxwell story. And the ultimate the ultimate is that MAGA was created by Trump. So that means that his own child is going to be his demise. Because if Trump loses the support of MAGA, that means that he loses the Republicans, he loses Congress, and then that's it. What I mean, that's it. Then the Japanese are going to say, oh, you know that deal that we worked on? That's not exactly what we meant. It's for something else. And frankly, you're too busy, so we're not going to... remember that in 2017, China was supposed to invest $200 billion in the U.S. of energy, and they never did. What was that story? So it does happen. It does happen that this kind of situation. I wanted to show you this because I think it's important. What was the China deals that they never completed? I think it was for 200 billion. Because basically Trump, a few years ago, yes, correct, 2020, the phase 1 trade deal. As part of the agreement, China committed to increase its purchase of U.S. goods and services by 200 billion over 2 years. That's basically what he's doing now with these other companies. Okay. Relative to 2017, China agreed to purchase 77 billion of manufacturing goods, $50 billion of energy. So the ideas that Trump has now, he had them before. And the time frame was 2020, 2021. And over 2 years, you were supposed to buy 200 billion. The same way uh, Europe is supposed to spend $750 billion over the next 3 years. There was a shortfall. Minus 24%, minus 36%, minus 60%, minus 44%, minus 39%. I think out of the target of 452 billion over 2 years, I think it didn't happen. The 200 was never fulfilled, with China meeting about 57% of its pledge. It remained one of the most cited examples of trade deal underperformance in modern China-US relation. And in fact, the Trump campaign used this example in 2024 as pointed to this as justification for more aggressive tariffs and decoupling strategy. Here's the word that I was looking for. Decoupling. In fact, I do have a decoupling Chinese story coming up for you next couple of days to discuss this. Right? The 200 billion was never fulfilled, with China meeting only 57 to 60% of its pledges. It remains one of the most cited examples of trade deals underperformance in modern. What do you think Trump is doing right now? He's saying, okay, listen, this is us trying to make deal with these people is not going to work. It is not going to work. What's going to work is the tariffs. And I want to coerce, I want to push, I want to shove, I want to tug. I need to do what I need to do for it to be happy. And that's what's going on right now. Right? They are trying to get this thing done, but and the thing with the submarine, yeah, it's a little bit ridiculous, right? He's out there, moving submarine around, but these people don't hear. And unfortunately, with China, and I'm telling you right now, with China, he's going to have to do something. He's going to have to push something with China to do something more because they're not talking to him. What do I mean is that they've been talking back and forth with China, and they're not getting anywhere. And they're not getting anywhere either with Ukraine. Of course, they're saying, well, that's because they're tougher. No, that's not the reason why. And this is why there's two levels of discussion. With Europe, he was able to get his way because Europe doesn't want to decouple. Europe wants to stay within the world. These European people, they like everyone. Okay, but China and Russia and potentially India, they want to decouple. There is a theory that they want to be their own people. They don't want to deal with the rest of the world because, frankly, the Western way of thinking is they like, it's a different way of thinking. Okay, and then you've got the U.S. underneath. So the idea is not so much that Europe, that China wants to go to war or anything like that, and they want to decouple. No, they want to decouple. They don't want to have anything to do with the rest of the world over time. Because basically what they've been doing, they've been taking all of the energy and all the knowledge from the U.S. That's the idea. That's what the way Trump looks at it. And ultimately what he wants to do is he's trying to bring all these people together. And if you can't bring them together, because Europe basically has agreed to, they agreed, right? Because Europe still wants to be with the U.S., while China and Russia have not agreed. And they're not going to agree because they don't want to play with you anymore. And Russia is not going to pull back just because just because they want to stop the war. No, this is the mode that they are in. It's a little bit like Netanyahu, right? Trying to pull him back, right? What does he want? I want to protect Israel against everyone. Well, that's true, but you also want to remain in power as well. So you need to understand what they're fighting really for, because it's important for them to realize that. Great news. Before we go any further, this is an important moment for all of you. We just reached 1,000 subscribers, my friend. 1,000. It's been a lot of work, I have to say. Been at this for 3 years, but I learned a lot. I want my subscribers to understand what I'm doing. I want my subscribers to really understand what we're doing, and it's really for to help you, right? To help you understand, because my concern is that there's lots of information everywhere, but there is 1,000. Yes, thank you. There's a lot information out there, but a lot of it is being explained to you in a very good way. And unfortunately, what's happening is you don't understand what's happening because they're telling you this and they're telling you that, and you're kind of like, okay, which one is which? What is going on? And that is always a concern. That is always a concern that you have to have, that you need to understand not what they're saying, but what they're not saying and what their strategy is. Why? Because it impacts you. For example, if this tariff business does not work as expected, meaning that you do have inflation, and if Trump is successful, and I think he's going to be successful, that I could tell you, in lowering, and I will do a video on that, and in lowering the amount of the rates out there. Why? Well, because there's 7 people plus 5 deciding, 12 people are going to decide, plus the chair in terms of the rates in August. Out of the 7 people, 2 of them say we should lower the rates. I think there's another one that you haven't heard of, and then one of the women governor just quit. We'll do a video on that to see what really went on there. So now 4 people are basically with Trump and they want lower rates. That was silly. And 3 people don't want to change the rates. So rates are definitely going down. And in fact, I think the Fed is going to quit as well. I've been saying that for a while. Probably Bassett is going to be the new guy. But the point is, if that works and they lower the rates, and they better lower the rates, and I tell you why, because if they don't lower the rates, you're going to lose the market, because the stock market is already assuming it. But suppose you have inflation because of the tariffs, and somehow Trump is not to hold the tariffs down, and rates go up, and inflation goes up, and you're lowering rates, it's going to be a catastrophe. So you're in a situation, without talking too much about the stock market, is that we could have a problem with the fact that you have low rates and you have huge amount of inflation. And so that's bad. And on the other hand, we could laugh at the world too. And on the other hand, what could happen is you could end up with a lot of a huge situation on your hands. Because, remember 1980? That was bad. That was very bad. So that's kind of the story with this nuclear business, which I don't think is going to go anywhere. But the way you should look at it is that basically Trump is not able to move Russia, is not able to move China, because these people are together. It's going to be a block, and they're trying to extrapolate India from it. But I'm not so sure that upsetting India is the best thing to do. Trump has turned against Russian president for not ending the war, but I don't think he wants to end this war. India would incur a penalty for its continued purchases of Russian goods. Okay, what you're going to do, you're going to force them to get them in faster. I don't care what India does with Russia. They can take, they can take their dead economies down together for all I care. The Indian Ministry of External Affairs told reporters Friday that the U.S.-India relationship has weathered several transition and challenges. We remain focused on the substantive agendas of 2 countries have committed to and are confident. Basically saying, no, I'm sorry, I know, well, even good friends sometimes have fights. Still, the comments are very stark, very stark shift in terms of what, India has been the most important relationship. Be careful, Trump complained about Biden weaponizing the dollar, but you weaponizing your words against India, and you're gonna push these people together. I mean, he hosted the guy in February and praised him for a much better negotiator. He was a great guy, and now you turned around and you're saying that your dead economies, who cares about you? And um, U.S. is trying to push open the India agricultural market, which employs about 40% of the country. You're basically telling India that's never going to work. He's asking India, who's 40% workforce, to say, why don't you start buying some wheat from Texas? I mean, opening the sector, which has long been protected by New Delhi, would anger India's farmer. I mean, the powerful voting broke that. I think, and I hate to say that, but I think Trump lost that battle with India, with Russia, and with China. And you could try, to get in there and explain to them, and somehow it could become a good thing. Isn't it? That dog don't hunt. That's over with. They lost that battle. That battle is lost. And they're not gonna. India is not gonna start getting the food and everything from the U.S. No way. I mean, U.S. and India are still negotiating a trade deal. I mean, you could see, and let's see if I'm wrong, but you could see that it's very difficult to deal with India, very difficult to deal with China, and very difficult to deal with Russia. It's a lot easier to deal with the European, which we have a deal. We have a deal with some of the smaller countries. We probably have a deal with Mexico, but that's something else, right? It's a lot easier. But the reason you don't have a deal because you're never going to have a deal. You're not going to have a deal because they were in the middle of it's like a divorce, basically. They were divorcing the U.S. And you got there too quickly. I think they didn't realize that Trump was going to, because he's extremely, extremely busy and going all over the place, and they didn't realize that he was going to be that fast and that effective. And what are you going to say? I'm sorry, it's not your fault. It's my fault. But no, I don't want to. I'm not going to. Imagine India is going to is going to buy wheat from the U.S. as opposed to its own farmers. There's no way that's going to happen. You see, why can't we just keep the thing that they were? Because a lot of people are saying, well, this is because of Trump. No, the U.S. needs to do something. Otherwise, you're going to lose relevancy. And the more you could see this thing happening, these blocks, and after all, BRICS, right? I did a video on BRICS. Brazil, Russia, China. Food security versus food sovereignty. Let's see some of the comments, and it hurts the U.S. Willing China buy oil from the U.S.? Right? How come? Why? In fact, that's a great question. Why isn't China, China or India, I think they are buying oil from U.S. Is it because we don't want to sell it? No. They don't buy much for strategic, economic, and logistical reason. Well, it is closer. Well, and the thing is, India has bought, has bought Russia. Yeah, you could buy from the US, but you have to, do you know how much oil is today? I think it's around $60, $70. The thing is, Russia is selling it for $20 to $30. They're giving the stuff away. In the US, oil especially is more expensive and harder to refine. Viva BRICS. U.S. crude takes 3 to 5 times longer to ship from Russia than Russia. India avoids becoming dependent on any one source, including the U.S., to preserve strategic autonomy. Buying Russian oil keep prices stable and help maintain favorable diplomatic relations. Why China? This is India, and why China buys little oil? Because since U.S.-China trade war, Beijing has avoided energy dependence on the U.S. I don't want your stuff. You're going to cut us any moment. Refinery fit, geopolitical tension. Shares of U.S. exports of oil, U.S. crude exports, I think Netherlands 12%, Korea 10, Canada 9, India 5. That's what they're not buying. They don't want dependence on. Why don't you want to be dependent on the U.S.? You don't trust the U.S.? Well, wow, we know what's happening next, and the next we're going to divorce you. So we don't want to be dependent on you. Because quite frankly, apart from Trump, before that, there was no reason not to trust the U.S., I think. You have all the reason to trust the U.S. You want to trust Russia, LOL. Well, it's not Russia, right? It's Putin. Now, of course, all this could change very well. Don't forget, Putin is what, 70 something years old? Trump, 79. China joined a Central American nation, has built a new, faster, more economical canal, stealing all heavy ships from. Yeah, I mean, they were doing that thing in Panama. That's when it started. And Trump said, whoa, 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 whoa. No, that's enough. So, to a certain extent, I would tend to agree what Trump is doing in protecting his stuff. But then again, India is protecting his own stuff, and China is also, they have the right to protect their own stuff too, and so is Russia. And because they're protecting and you don't like what they're protecting, you're saying they're good and you're good and they're bad? No, but unfortunately, if everybody's protecting themselves like that, that's how war starts, right? Because at some point, you can't keep protecting with somebody else's neighbor. He's 72. 6 years from election, yeah, but he's going to be reelected. So I think that Putin's going to outlive Trump, unfortunately. So, but be careful what you wish for, right? Because once Trump is gone, who is going to be able to pry these people apart? Because it is a group. Hopefully, from this discussion, you realize that there's a decoupling going on, and that's going to be subject for another discussion. There's a decoupling going on, and you might lose the efforts. You might lose the decoupling, and if you lose that, do you realize what it takes to get these people together to go after? I mean, maybe he probably overdoes it somewhere by fighting that poor lady at BLS. You know, but he's fighting the Fed. He's fighting the countries. He's fighting his own people sometimes. He's all over the place. But then again, maybe he needs to be because he realized, of course, you're going to say, well, the reason he's doing because he's mean. And well, maybe he realizes, and always look at the second reason. Maybe he realizes something needs to get done because we're losing it. European and Asian investors have joined in financial or fuel seaport for Afghanistan. You have to, yeah, I mean, ED behind, yes, hide behind. You have to be careful because what's going to happen ultimately, you may end up in a position where you are you're losing ground. Hopefully you realize that. No, you're not going to become irrelevant today, tomorrow, but, soon. And by irrelevant, it means that not that they're going to invade you, but they don't need you anymore. And I don't think the U.S. wants that. Okay, so what we're going to be talking about next, we're going to definitely talking about this decoupling. I want you to hear about the decoupling as it is extremely important because I'm concerned about the stock market because we're talking about all these things, but I'm concerned about two things. I'm concerned about 10 things, and I'll do this, and then so I'm concerned about the economy because the economy right now is strong, but also unemployment is getting weaker. The stock market is extremely overvalued, so be very careful about that. If this thing goes sideways any way, shape, or form, it's going to be tough. The dollar is getting weaker. Tariffs are great. The U.S. is probably going to make about $600 billion. Powell is going to leave, and the rates are going to go lower. Israel hopefully is under control. I don't know. Let's see. Because because Netanyahu is out of control, unfortunately. And not so much because of Gaza and all this. It's just because he needs to keep fighting so he remains relevant and because they want to put him to jail. And then you have inflation wash. And then Russia, obviously, today. That's a big topic. So let's watch all these issues. I'm going to talk about the Fed very soon and the decoupling of China. And I'm sure, and then of course, Epstein is going to be back, I'm telling you. So everyone, thank you very much for joining today. I will see you very soon.